Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada. Radha 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 Madhava. Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sanyavadi Paschatira Satarine. Go Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol. Welcome to all of you. Today, you would think, we had comments from the last class. Oh yeah. So, Satyarupa, I don't have my computer. So, could you put the comments up like one by one? Vijay Lakshmi doesn't want her comments there, but so we had a lot of comments from the last class which we didn't address, and so we can address them now. And if Satyarupa can put them up one by one, and then I'll address them. And it's interesting. We're talking about Maya. This is a class on Maya. You'd think we're supposed to talk about Krishna. Isn't that everywhere the Shastra says Krishna Katha? It doesn't say Maya Katha. The fact is that Prabhupada has spoken much about Maya. because you have to understand how Maya works. That's important. So, one thing that we've been talking about that I love to emphasize, and it's interesting that I've been emphasizing this point lately, that Krishna will give intelligence. And people have been sending me things, and I've been seeing things on the internet where Prabhupada is talking about this, Krishna giving intelligence. Just 1 second, I have to plug in the phone. I think the battery's low. And from listening, from reading everything that Prabhupada has said about Krishna giving intelligence, there's this theme that comes up, and this has always struck me, is that yeyatamam prapadyante, that's the reality of the world, is that what we want, where we direct ourselves, where our consciousness is, Krishna, he's keyed into that, and he's reciprocating with that. And whether it's we want Maya, we want Krishna, or one or another degree of each, Krishna is there to reciprocate with that. And so what's so beautiful about it is that when we feel hopeless, helpless in Krishna consciousness, we take refuge in the idea that if we have the desire to be Krishna conscious, Krishna will help. He'll reciprocate. In some way, he'll help us do that. And he'll guide us. He'll put us in the association of the right devotees. He'll give us the strength. Even sometimes it doesn't feel like that. But I think we all have so much experience of this, Krishna doing this. And so no matter how difficult it gets, no matter how foolish we feel we are, ultimately, our refuge is that if we want something sincerely, steadily, and bad enough, and we show Krishna this is really what we want, he'll guide us to achieve it. And so we just have to be careful that what we want is not something other than Krishna. So that's a beautiful thought. So in terms of Prabhupada always talking about how Maya is darkness, Krishna is light, so darkness can't stand in light. And if Krishna gives you intelligence, then there's no way Maya can keep us in illusion. And the fact that we're all still devotees is proof of that reality, that Maya cannot keep us in illusion, at least not perpetually, not constantly. Otherwise, we would have given up on our Krishna consciousness. So the fact that we're here means to one degree or another, Krishna is guiding us, and Krishna is the light that's defeating Maya. And we just need as much light as we can and as little darkness as we can. But I would just ask all of you to meditate on this reality, that wherever we are in our life, Krishna has reciprocated with us to get there. And wherever we want to go, he will reciprocate. Okay, so here's a comment from Billy Lynn. I don't know if she's here. There are some moments when I have not had access to the normal womanhood. There aren't systems in place for every woman in our society that allows the women to fit its mold. We were talking about how women, I think we were talking about how women are sometimes forced to become more male-like. The way the culture is today. This is a long one, maybe. If those systems were in place, I wouldn't have been the woman I am today. So she's saying she's become stronger, having to, I guess, fend for herself a bit. I probably wouldn't have felt this way for Krishna, or felt it was safe to feel this way for Krishna. I think that gender roles are blurred, especially for folks that are third gender. But a person loves God who wishes to grow, right? There is a lot of need for removing the potential for lust in every scenario, especially in religious programs. But a person who feels romantically for men isn't necessarily protected like the way folks who have an inclination towards women do. I'm not sure where this is going, but we were there's an interesting point. We were talking about, I forget exactly how we evolved in this. I think the female guru issue came in some way, and female role. And I think it is an extremely important point. I think we were talking about the female guru issue was I don't know if I made this point, but I'll make it now, is that it's not just an issue about women, it's an issue about culture. And it's an issue about varnashram. And one of the things you see in varnashram, when varnashram says something should be a certain way, excuse me, it needs an environment for it to be a certain way. So let's say you say, this is how you take care of a rose. You water it this way, you have this kind of soil, and so on and so forth. So if you follow the instructions, the rose will grow, but you need all the conditions. It has to be the right weather, the right rose, the right soil. Different roses will grow in different climates, will grow in different soil. So Vedic instructions are like that. So sometimes when we read something, say, well, let's just give a very easy example. You should surrender to a guru. Okay, that's a very clear example. But there's obvious details, like the guru should be bona fide. And if you surrender to any guru, that could be dangerous because that guru could take advantage of you or mislead you. So if you just look at the instructions, surrender to guru, and make that global, and I come along and say, no, don't surrender to that guru, you could say, well, in the Shastra it says surrender to the guru. But I say, but it also gives qualification of a guru. And you think, oh, okay, so there's more to surrendering to a guru than just someone who says they're a guru. The guru needs qualification. Okay, we all understand this. This is simple, ABC. Now, I think what we don't understand is a lot of instructions that are given in Shastra. In order for us to do them, they require other things to be set in place. So maybe one of the most common ones, which could be misused, is the chastity and the dedication of the wife to the husband, which all Shastras recommend. And I don't think women have a problem with this. They have a problem with men who are not qualified to be dedicated to. They have a problem with men taking advantage of that. So just let's use the guru example, because I think there's a lot of parallels between guru and husband and even father, because they have some authority. They have by Shastra they're given some authority. Okay, so let's look at the guru. The guru has authority, and the disciple should surrender to the guru. What does the guru do when the disciple surrenders? He reciprocates. He surrenders back. He gives love, he gives service, he gives guidance, he gives affection. So we always feel that our guru is giving us more than we're giving him. And so it's no problem for us to surrender, quote unquote, to give to the guru. In fact, as a disciple feels the affection and the service and the care of the guru, the disciple just wants to give back naturally. And many women have told me it's natural for women to want to serve, to want to be chaste, to want to give and sacrifice to their husband if their husband is loving, caring, etc., which is exactly the same with the spiritual master. It's natural. One wants to give to a person who's giving more to them. And so the spiritual master, although the disciple is quote unquote surrendered, he never takes advantage of that. The only way he takes advantage of that is that he takes that energy that the disciple is giving and he uses it in Krishna's service. So that disciple's energy is totally directed through him for Krishna's service, and then he just gives back love, affection, care, instruction, guidance, and so forth. So naturally, it's very easy for the disciple to surrender. If the guru is exploiting the disciple, if the guru is mistreating the disciple, if the guru is utilizing the disciple's service for anything other than Krishna's service, then the disciple is going to have a hard time. And they're going to say, I don't know if this guru is bona fide. I don't know if I can surrender to this guru. So, father, king, Brahman, they're all meant to be served, honored, respected. And so it says that in the Shastra, and then we have the problem. What's the problem? You probably noticed the problem. It's Kali Yuga. There are many unqualified husbands, unqualified kings, unqualified Brahmins, unqualified gurus. In fact, Prabhupada said basically there are no Brahmins, there are no Kshatriyas, there's a few Vaishyas, and everyone is Shudra. Wow. So now you read the Shastra, it says you should do this. But the point is you should do it for a person who's qualified to accept that service. That's where we start running into problems. And sometimes a woman's being mistreated, or sometimes the disciple is being mistreated. It does happen. Or sometimes a guru deviates, or sometimes a husband cheats on his wife. Sometimes a father even abuses physically, verbally, or even sexually abuses his daughter. And the father is supposed to be the guru to the family, and the children should be obedient. How can you be obedient to someone who's not qualified? And I think that was Prabhupada's, one of the reasons Prabhupada was so successful is that he was so qualified for us to surrender to, and we never found a person who we could repose our faith in to that degree that we would give everything. And parents were amazed at how much we were doing and how much we were giving to Prabhupada, because they never saw their children do that before. So I think this is a huge problem because it's a holistic system. So it's not just that the disciple or the wife or the citizens serve the guru, the husband, the king, and so forth. It's that the king, the husband, the wife, the king, the husband, the Brahmin, the guru, they have to serve also. They have to perform their function. So now we go to the Shastra and it says a disciple should be this way, a citizen should be this way, a wife should be this way. And we can't argue with the Shastra. We can only argue with the qualification of the person who's receiving that service. And if they're not qualified to receive that service, then in the example of the guru, in the Shastra it says that if your guru, number one, don't surrender to an unqualified guru. And Prabhupada would joke, he said, there's no such thing as an unqualified guru, because if he's unqualified, he's not a guru. There's no such thing as a bad guru, because if he's bad, how can he be a guru? But for the sake of this discussion, of course, these things are described when a guru is unqualified. And sometimes a guru was never qualified, and sometimes he was qualified, but he deviated. And the Shastra describes this because it happens. There was a group of devotees who were very, very hard on some of the gurus in ISKCON when they fell. And they said, how could they be, ever be gurus because they fell? But then we went to the history. Some devotees showed us in various teachings of previous acharyas the history that sometimes, it's rare, but sometimes a guru does fall. And so there were instructions to the disciples what to do when your guru deviates. And obviously, if a guru falls away from Krishna consciousness, it's not the duty of the disciple to follow them. So what the Shastra said is that the disciple should talk to the guru and beg the guru to get back on the path. But if they don't get back on the path, they should separate. They should not serve that guru, because the karmic consequence of serving someone who's not worthy of being served is that you suffer and you become dragged down. So that's why service to the pure devotee is so powerful, because by serving the pure devotee, you get purity. But by serving someone who's impure, you become impure. So therefore, the Shastra said, if the guru does not rectify himself, or if the guru becomes a Mayavadi, or he becomes an offender to Krishna, or tells you don't surrender to Krishna, then if you serve him, you become contaminated by that service, just as you become purified by serving the pure devotee. So that's there. Now, I don't know if all you women know this, and unfortunately, I can't cite specifics, it's very unfortunate, because I don't want you to misunderstand this, and I don't want to recite specifics that I'm not sure of. But in Manu Samhita, there are conditions in which divorce is sanctioned, either because of what the man is doing or because of what the woman is doing. Like if the woman is barren and she can't have children, the husband can divorce her or marry other women or something. And if the husband is, this is the part I don't remember, if the husband is this or that, there are some conditions in which it's not sinful to leave or divorce. So I think that's important to understand. So we understand that with a guru. We understand if someone is a so-called Brahmin who is giving you knowledge which is incorrect, or is asking you to give charity, and he's going to use it for his own sense gratification, you wouldn't give just because he's a Brahmin. This is a big problem in India, because Indians think, well, he's a Brahmin, he's a sadhu, I should give. And we might say, no, he's not a sadhu. And they might think, yeah, but how do we know? And so on and so forth. So it allows a lot of unscrupulous people to take advantage of the public, because they think, well, maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but if I don't serve him, maybe he is, and then I'll suffer. Or maybe he has mystic power, he could curse me in some way. And so people take advantage of this, and people in ignorance misunderstand it. So yes, the disciple should serve the guru. Yes, the citizens should honor the king. Of course, the king is not like our political leaders now. You may remember that when Ram was exiled, he was so loved by the citizens, they all went with him. We don't see that. That's rare. We might see a little bit, but it's rare. So yes, and the sacrifice is natural. We should sacrifice to the guru, to our leaders, to our countries, to our husbands, wives, and so forth. But if they're not qualified, it's difficult, sometimes impossible, and sometimes it's just wrong. So I think that's an important distinction. So now what happens is, for a lot of women who are not taking traditional female roles, they're being criticized. No, this is the role. This is what the Shastra says. This is how you should be. You should serve your husbands, take care of them, make sure they're happy, and so on and so forth. Fine. No problem. As long as the husband is doing the same thing for the wife, she won't have a problem. That's the duty of the wife, who also serve, who also take the duty of the husband, who also serve, take care, and so forth. But when he doesn't do that, then he makes it difficult. For her, I wrote an article, and it was based on something that I heard in the class, and the statement was that if you see a woman who's married and she's happy, it's likely it's because she has a good husband. That's why she's happy. If you see a woman who's married and she's not happy, it's probably because her husband is not properly taking care of her. Of course, she could be happy because she's transcendental. And she could be unhappy because her father just died or something. But in general, a happy woman is because, at least partially so, because she has a good husband. An unhappy woman is partially so, or sometimes totally so, because she has a husband he's not doing the work of a husband. And so what we find in the world of divorce, it's usually women who instigate the divorce. It's harder for them. Women are relationship-oriented, so if there's a bad relationship, men can somehow or other function with bad relationships. They just go off in their cave and, they just live happily ever after in a bad marriage, as long as they have their own room. And they don't have to, if they wash the dishes and their wife won't talk to them, they'll go, okay, I can do that. But women can't do that. So as Prabhupada said, and I'm pretty certain this is statistically provable, that it's usually women who initiate divorce. And so in thinking about this topic, the and not in thinking about this topic, but in relation to this topic, the devotee who was giving class said, he said, therefore, even though it's the fault of the women, but if they have a good husband, they won't divorce. So indirectly, you could say it's the fault of the husband for not properly taking care of the women, even though they initiate the divorce. Therefore, it seems like it's their fault. And it seems like if we say it's the husband's fault, we would be contradicting Prabhupada, because he said usually it's the women or the women's fault. But I think that's to argue against that and think that the husband has nothing to do with the reaction of the wife is unfair, and it's not realistic. So, it takes two to tango. So just putting all the blame on her, it may be statistically, yes, it's usually she's the one, but generally it's women don't divorce husbands who are good. And that's just the way the world works. I mean, maybe an extremely lusty woman may have an affair, but generally, if a woman has a good husband, she's happy. And so then when we go to the Shastra, you should serve your husband, you should be submissive, all these things, it's like, no problem. It's just natural. That's woman's nature. It's not like you have to force that. You have to force it when she has a bad husband. And so here's the problem that I see that comes up when we don't understand this clearly, that sometimes you get a situation where a husband is abusive. And the woman is instructed, will just tolerate the abuse. Okay, toleration is good. To tolerate is, it's always good to be tolerant. But sometimes by being tolerant, you empower the husband to do more harm. And sometimes you become damaged. I'm not talking about physically damaged. Obviously, if you're being physically violated, you have to get away from that situation for your own health, safety. But you may be emotionally violated and be destroyed emotionally in that situation. So sometimes if we tell a person, well, you should just tolerate, sometimes that can resolve the situation. The husband sees that she's tolerating. He realizes he's making mistakes. He apologizes. He rectifies himself. And by her being tolerant and forgiving and so forth, it actually had a very good effect on him. But if she's done that over a period of time, often, if it doesn't have that effect on the husband, it has the opposite effect. And he just thinks, I can take advantage of her because she's very tolerant and he makes her feel like everything's her fault. It's a very, very common scenario. He's not acting properly as a husband, and he blames everything on her. And some women believe that, and that's why they tolerate it. They're not tolerating it because they're Krishna conscious. They're tolerating it because they're made to feel like everything's their fault. And so in those situations, if you instruct a woman just tolerate, it then becomes destructive to her. The other thing that it destroys is the family in general. And this is also interesting, because often when there's conflict in the home, the thought is, well, we shouldn't divorce because that would be bad for the children. But there's another side to that. And when the children are growing up in a home where the father is abusing his wife, that's more destructive to the children than if they divorce. Because when the children see that, it's at least this is what I've studied, they actually become more damaged than the wife. The other thing that I haven't studied but I've seen, and this comes up a lot when there's improper treatment of the husband to the wife or vice versa, the first thing that comes to my mind is that's probably how her mother dealt with her husband, or that's probably how his father dealt with his mother. That's what they saw growing up. So if there's a bad example, that's what the kids learn, and they think that's normal. So don't think that staying together is always a solution. And so this is where I take objection that sometimes, no matter what happens, devotees are given the advice, just stay together, stay together. But at a certain point, staying together, it's not it's not what the Vedas would recommend. You're only taking half of the instruction because the other half is the other person's not qualified. Stay with your guru. But my guru, he's going out with girls and he's drinking beer. Stay with your guru. Just tolerate it. But he's telling me to engage in sinful activities. Stay with your guru. Nobody would say that. So why would we say that with a husband or a king or a Brahmin? We shouldn't. It's no different. So, Billy Lynn, I don't think that where you were going with your statement, but that's where I wanted to take it. So, and now I'm going to go down. I think the statements of Billy Lynn that she posted here are very personal, and I think if she wants to discuss, she can write me. But I think I like, some problems sometimes when we discuss things in a class, if it's personal, but everyone can relate to it, then it's good. But if it's more personal, and not everyone can relate to it, then it just kind of bores everyone because this doesn't relate to me. So it's not that you can't ask questions that relate to you, but I find that the questions that relate to you that are more global are really good questions, because everyone is thinking, yeah, I have that same problem, but it was very specific. So I sometimes, in answering the question, I might take a specific question and make it more general. And Billy Lynn, if I didn't answer directly, you can write me. So Satyarupa is saying, if we surrender to someone who is not qualified, then it's surrender in the mode of ignorance. This was a very common theme in as I remember, in the beginning of the movement, who is a bona fide guru and how to surrender. Prabhupada was very outspoken about not surrendering to someone who is not bona fide. And it's interesting because one should surrender to a guru, that you should serve the guru humbly, submissively, and so forth. And if someone is doing that to a guru who is not qualified, even though they're doing the right thing, they suffer. There's a statement, a very heavy statement, I believe it's in the Isopanishad, and that verse, Anham tamaham pravisanti ye vidyamupasi. It's about the ignorant cultivating nescience, and you go to the darkest regions of ignorance. Andha tamaham pravishanti. So Prabhupada talks about ignorance in relation to hearing from a guru who's not qualified. And I believe it's there that Prabhupada said, the guru goes to hell and the disciple goes with him. That's also, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that if a guru is after disciples, and he initiates unqualified disciples, he goes to hell, and the disciple goes to hell. Conversely, if your guru is going back to Godhead, you also will be going. So, even though you do your duties properly, as a bona fide disciple, submissively serving your guru, which is good. The problem is, if your guru is not qualified, wherever he's going, you're going. So, just be careful. You get the right guru. I mean, that's the fact. Wherever your guru is going, you're going. So, that's why Prabhupada was, he was quite open talking about gurus who were not bona fide. He also saw atheistic scientists as gurus of sorts, and that's why he spoke very strongly against them. And as I had mentioned, I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago, he spoke very strongly against anyone who was misleading people. And in private, Prabhupada had occasionally said some very strong words against some very popular gurus who he felt were misleading people, because they weren't teaching people to surrender to Krishna. They were teaching people that they are Krishna. And these are not bona fide gurus. And these are not gurus who can take you back to Godhead. So Prabhupada was sometimes outspoken. He tried to avoid controversy in this area. He tried to avoid attacking them personally. But on a philosophical level, he made the point. If you surrender to someone who's not bona fide, it will be a disaster for you. So that can be applied in any area of authority. Right? So our job is to surrender to Prabhupada and surrender to those who are surrendered to Prabhupada. And then we're safe. Because Prabhupada will never cheat us. Prabhupada will never exploit us. Prabhupada will never misguide us. And someone who is dedicating their life to Prabhupada will never misguide, will never cheat, will never exploit. And so that's the Krishna consciousness movement. It's a place where you can get shelter. But there are many gurus who will exploit, who will cheat. I was just in a meeting this morning. And there's a guru from Bangalore. Vijay Lakshmi knows him. He has a name. I won't call him by his name. I just call him Playboy. Because if you look at him, he's wearing saffron, but he looks like a Playboy. And they say looks are deceiving. In his case, no. He looks like what he is. So we were just told, we were having a meeting about our work in China, and I was told that he's in China offering pujas to cure cancer and other problems. $1,000 per puja. Good business, isn't it? You think we should start that business in China, offering pujas, 1,000 each? I don't think so. So he's taking advantage of innocent people. Yeah, that's not a real guru. When I was 17, I received a mantra from the Maharishi Mahesh Yoga, and that was, so I'm 17. So that was 1967. I could have been 16. I remember 17. I received a mantra from the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And we were told that week, no sex, no drugs, no meat or something, then you get the mantra. And the mantra cost $35. At that time, the minimum wage in America was $1.25. So I think now the minimum wage is like $8 or $9. Let's just multiply the minimum wage by eight times. So 25 now becomes $200. So in today's, with inflation in today's currency, if you want to take initiation from, I don't know what he charges, if he charges, but if it's the same ratio, you would get a mantra for $200. And so Prabhupada made the point that the Vedic tradition is that the guru gives the mantra when the disciple is qualified. And yes, the disciple gives Guru Dakshina for that initiation. That is the system. But the Guru does not put a price on the mantra. The Guru does not sell the mantra. The Dakshin may be 1 paisa. Prabhupada said, it's the system. The system is not giving money. The system is begging. That's the system. You go out and beg. It's humility. After you're initiated, you go out and beg some Dakshin for your Guru. So you learn humility in service to your Guru. They sold you an initiation. So Prabhupada would periodically criticize the mantra peddling guru. He said, gurus don't sell mantras. And that was a sign. If a guru is selling a mantra, it's a sign he's bogus. And so in this way, Prabhupada would point this out. And so his point was, don't surrender to a bogus guru. So my point is, why would that be different in surrendering to anyone? A president, a king, a Brahmin, a husband, whatever. And you say, because that's what it says in Shastra. And that's my whole point of this talk. It's contextual. The person you're surrendering to has to be qualified. If they're not qualified, you are not obligated to surrender. It's your choice if you want to. You want to maintain the relationship with your husband. You want to try to help him become better. You want to be submissive because that's the role of the wife. Sure, fine, all these things. But ultimately, you're not obligated to surrender to a person who's not qualified. Now, Prabhupada said something. I don't know if you've read this. I believe it's the 6th canto. It's quite interesting in relation to this conversation. It's right in a purport, in black and white. Whether you want to execute this instruction or not, that's for you to decide. But in black and white, Prabhupada said, if a woman has a husband who is not following the 4 regulative principles, she can leave him. She doesn't have to serve him. Something like both, Anyway, you get the idea. She's not obligated to that husband anymore because he's not following. That's the 4 regulative principles. We're not even talking about that's how many husbands follow the 4 regulative principles. That's a pretty high standard, right? So I think this is a bit overlooked in ISKCON. There's more of like the wife, submissive wife, just do whatever the husband says. And I was telling Nadia yesterday, I was saying that if a woman has a good husband, it can be immensely beneficial to her spiritual and material life. And if she has a bad husband, it can be immensely destructive to her material and spiritual life. Bona fide guru. Right? Immensely beneficial. And if he's not bona fide, immensely destructive. Okay. So now we have the next question, and I'll try to relate this next question to this topic. And Charlene is saying, why, despite so many spiritual practices, anger does not leave the heart in some cases? Well, Charlene, I think we could add to the anger, why doesn't lust leave, and greed and so on. We'll use the example of the heart as a pot, and the pot has been burnt. You ever cook rice and burn it? That's a bit of a problem to get off. Sometimes you have to soak it and wash it and soak it and wash it. Sometimes you can't just get it all done in one session. So basically the heart is pretty much like burnt rice. Maybe we should write a song. Burnt rice in the heart. I've cleaned pots with burnt rice before, and the whole bottom was covered. You couldn't see any metal. So as you're cleaning, the first indication you're making progress is you see little pieces of metal shining through. So you go, oh, I'm getting somewhere. It seemed like I was getting nowhere. So maybe what would be good for you, Charlene, is to see the little pieces of metal shining through. See the positive side. Well, normally this angers me and that angers me, but since chanting Hare Krishna, I only get angered by this, but not by that. So I am making progress. In a purified state, you won't have a problem with anger. In a purified state, you won't have a problem with false ego, with greed, lust, anything. In an impure state, think of it like a disease. Like, okay, let's say you have COVID and you're recovering. It's going to take a while, right? You say to the doctor, why am I not better? I've had COVID for 3 weeks. Why am I not better? It's going to take time. Sometimes that's all the doctor can say. Oh, this disease is going to take time. So that would be my answer to you. This disease called Maya is going to take time to overcome. But the first stage of progress, Charlene, is not that you don't become angry, but that you don't act out on your anger. That will be the first stage of your progress. That means if you still feel the anger but you don't express it, that means you're making progress. So maybe that, rather than get discouraged that you have anger, become encouraged by the fact that now you're learning to control it. Now you don't have it so intensely, so often. And that would be my encouragement to all of you, that don't become discouraged by the fact that lust, anger, greed, etc. is still there, but realize you can control it. You don't have to act on it. And that's one stage of progress before it's completely purified, is that I can control it. I still feel it, but I won't say anything. Like maybe you're a critical person, but as you progress in Krishna consciousness, your tendency to criticize may not subside so much, but you actually never do it. So you still may be thinking, oh, that devotee, this and that. But now you stop talking about it. That would be stage one. And then gradually you stop thinking about it. That's the next level. So, give yourself, I think also it's important, whenever you do anything in Krishna consciousness where you could give yourself a pat on the back, give yourself a pat on the back. Because otherwise it could seem like I'm not really making progress. But so sometimes you have to notice the progress. Say, oh, well, actually, I do see a little metal coming through the bottom. And it is true, before I was a devotee, I had more difficulty controlling this or that. I'm doing better now. So give yourself the benefit of the doubt. It'll encourage you. Now, you might say, seems like I'm worse since I become a devotee. And I would say, in many cases, it seems like it's worse because you're more aware. It may not be worse. It just may mean that you're more aware. But even if it is worse, it's like it's like, I'll give an example. Like sometimes circumstantially, like today's one example. Like I don't eat breakfast till I won't eat breakfast till class ends. And sometimes we've had meetings, and then the meetings ended at like 11, and then I had to do some things, and I didn't eat breakfast till like 12, 1, 2. I've even gone a few weeks ago, it was like 4 o'clock, I had my breakfast or something, right? It just happened, I was busy, and I wanted to get things done, and I wasn't that hungry, I could tolerate it. But then if you say, today is a fast day, you can't eat till 12. I'm like, oh, it's like 7 in the morning. I'm so hungry now. How am I going to make it till 12? It's somehow or other, I don't know if you have that experience. Or today's Ekadasi. I haven't eaten grains in 400 years. Today's Ekadasi. Oh, no, I can't eat grains. It's like there's something about when you take something away, somehow or other it becomes more attractive. You ever had that experience? Like you don't even want something, you don't care about it, and then it's taken away, and you're like, oh no, it's gone. What if I need it? So sometimes it's like that when you become a devotee, you give up things, you start thinking about them more. It's like, it's interesting, isn't it? I think many things apparently become more attractive after you become a devotee simply because you've given them up. And they weren't so attractive before because you had them. They were all around you. So it's like, Now he's a brahmachari, all of a sudden women are like becoming more attractive. Well, before he was a brahmachari, he was a playboy. He had like 10 girlfriends all the time. So it was like, girls, whatever. I've had, I got plenty of girls. I don't need any more. Now he becomes a brahmachari, no girls. Now he's thinking of girls all the time. So sometimes it's like that, It's not that you're more attracted. It's just that you're not surrounded by it. And now you're thinking about it. Which it also can mean that you are becoming purified. It just doesn't seem like it. It's circumstantial. I don't know. I have that experience. Because there are many days I don't eat grains. It just happens. No problem. It's just natural. And then Ekadasi comes, oh no grains. You've seen that video. There's devotees going through grain withdrawal. They're like waking up at night, in their sleep, going in the kitchen to get some grains. It's Ekadasi. So, anyway, that's just something we have to deal with. So Jyotirmaya says, I did initiate my divorce actually because he was cheating on me and he was obstructing my spiritual path. Yeah. So every case is different. And, a lot of times you can't can't say what's right and wrong just based on what the external circumstances are. But Prabhupada's general instruction is if our spiritual life is being obstructed, then we have to do something to correct that. So, 50% of men cheat on their wives. About 25 to 30% of women do it, because women did not do it so much until they started working in the workplace. So ladies, I don't know the statistics in ISKCON. I'm sure they're much lower. But if you were not a devotee and you got married, there would be a 50% chance your husband would cheat on you. And probably a greater chance that he would be cheating on you in his mind, not doing it actually. And so if your husband cheats and you remarry, you're going to remarry someone where the stakes are 50% against you. That is going to happen again. Whereas if the husband is willing to rectify himself and is able to do that, then there's less of it. Then it's a safer position of that husband will have less of a chance of cheating on you. That's something to consider. I know for many women, once a husband cheats on them, it's like that's it. It's all over. But I'm not saying this is your case, Jyotirmaya. I'm speaking in general. One thing to consider when a partner cheats is that the spouse may have driven them crazy and driven them to that point. Not always, but sometimes. And so the spouse may want to consider, did I drive this poor guy into this situation? Did I drive him crazy? Of course, the devotee women can say, yeah, I drove him to it because I wanted to be celibate. That's a whole other topic. Yeah. It's so hard to, it's such a challenge to apply Krishna consciousness, isn't it? In modern culture. That's where we run into so much trouble. It's mental damage and emotionally too. Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. And we have Jai Radhe, Jenny Yu. Be careful who you marry. Yeah. Should we make a T-shirt with that? Be careful who you marry. Be careful who you marry. You could fall in love with them. Yeah. Or something like that. I could not emphasize that mantra more. You could never emphasize that mantra enough. Be careful who you marry. It's so true. Because many people bring out the best in us, and many people bring out the worst in us. And if you're married to someone who brings out the worst in you, you might drive that person crazy. You may drive him to another husband or wife. And understanding the person you marry is important. Unfortunately, you can't always understand everything about them, but you should be careful. You should, I always tell, well, talk to their mother, talk to their brothers, talk to the devotees that know them. Get a, more of a broad view of what are they like. But one thing I have to understand is someone can be a very amazing person, very kind, nice, balanced, and so forth. And when they get in association with the opposite sex, it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's like, it's like Frankenstein. Was that it? I forgot. That was so long ago. It's like we say day and night. Like a Frankenstein comes out. And everybody's thinking, but he was she was such a nice brahmachari. He said, yeah, but in the marriage life, they became like, tyrants and this and that. That's something we need to work on personally. Okay. Vrindavan Leela Pandorhanson says, I tried to help an Indian lady and her son who had an abusive husband. She wouldn't leave her husband and kept repeating, I can't leave my husband. This is my karma. There's nothing I can do. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that example up. I think one of the things that we've been seeing and discussing, maybe it's not so obvious, but in the way I give class, I try to show or explain how sometimes it's difficult to understand Shastric application. And that's how this class began, because the Shastra says, do this. So, yeah, okay, I'm suffering, it's just my karma. Yeah, that could be. But if someone were beating you up, you would probably try to defend yourself or run rather than think it's just my karma. If someone were cheating you in business, you probably would try to retaliate rather than thinking, oh, it's just my karma, let them do it. So I'll lose the money one way or the other. So although philosophically it's true, whatever happens is our karma, on a practical level, we never saw that Prabhupada, or generally we didn't see that Prabhupada said, don't do anything. Well, Prabhu, I have this, broken bone. Just your karma, just tolerate it. No, go to the doctor, get a cast or whatever they do these days to fix broken, glue it together. In my case, they just I had a fracture. They just basically put a screw in my hip. Okay, he's all done. Patch him up. There you go. Like 2 pieces of wood screwed together. There's a little splinter in the wood. Okay, whatever they do, patch him up, But we don't say, well, it's my karma. I just won't walk for the rest of my life. Because when I fractured my hip, I couldn't walk. So now you can notice I walk, I'm fine. So we have to consider, a balance between both. But my observation is that when something is destroying you spiritually or destroying your family, destroying your children, then it's your responsibility to do something. And if you quote something from Shastra, in the name of this is what Shastra says, but the result is that it's destroying you, don't you think that would be a misunderstanding of Shastra, misapplication? And so, actually, we're going to give a class on Saturday on this topic. It's kind of like seeing Shastra within a vacuum. And I think this is one of the reasons we need association of senior devotees who can explain things contextually. Okay, Prabhupada said this or Shastra said that. But Shastra also said 10 other things which broaden our understanding of this. Prabhupada also said 5 other things which broaden our understanding. So if you're trying to understand something, don't just take one thing and don't understand it in a very narrow way. Try to understand it as broadly as you can with other references, with discussing it with senior devotees, and then come to conclusions. Otherwise, often what we see, which is so sad and which is so potentially dangerous when we spread Krishna consciousness, is people misunderstand Shastra. And then the consequence is they do something which is wrong, which is empowered by the shloka or empowered by something Prabhupada said. And so that is dangerous and that is unfortunate. And I'm sure many of you have seen this. Devotee, in the name of, here's the quote, goes out and does something that's harmful for themselves or harmful for others, or in some way detrimental to their spiritual progress. But that's a very immature way of dealing with that. And we've seen, maybe one of the most common examples we've seen is devotees being blasphemous and critical of others. And then they hear, I'm criticizing you, you're this or that, useless bum, so-called this, so-called leader, but you're just a materialistic. And then I bring in the quote, the purport, the verse. And actually thinking that that's what Prabhupada would tell this person. We have no example of Prabhupada dealing with a disciple that way, but I think it's my duty to tell the disciple, you're a nonsense rascal, etc., based on what Prabhupada said. And so you see this happening not infrequently. I don't say what happens every day, but you see it happening not infrequently. Well, if Prabhupada said this, then I should just tell this devotee, you're a nonsense rascal. That's what's going on. Or what's going on is I'll tell myself I'm a nonsense rascal, become so depressed and suicidal that I, hang my beads up for the rest of this lifetime. So that also happens. You read things in Shastra about how horrible conditioned we are, and if you have one little spot of desire, you're going to become a whatever in your next life. And then you just destroy yourself with that shloka. I'm sure we've seen that, right? Devotees being self-destructive. And why are you self-destructive, Prabhu? It's this verse right here. This is the verse that's allowing me to kill myself, or destroy myself, destroy my, or whatever, however you decide to destroy yourself. So, that's sad. And that's obviously not the meaning of those verses and purports. So this is something really, really important before you jump to conclusions about anything, especially if the conclusion of your understanding of the Shastras that you're now completely discouraged, or you're about to discourage or criticize somebody else, or you're in a situation where your Krishna consciousness is being greatly disturbed and you can't make progress, before you just think, oh, well, here's the verse that validates all these situations, you may want to discuss with some senior devotees and get another opinion, because Shastra is meant to be understood through acharyas, through explanations. And the more we have guidance of senior devotees to explain things, the better off we'll be. And the last thing I would say is, when you take guidance, especially where you have to make a major decision, don't just take it from one person. Because, sometimes the devotee you're taking it from may exactly be interpreting the Shastra exactly how you do. And there may be another devotee who interprets it differently, and you need to at least get like they say, when you go to a doctor, get a second opinion. In this case, 2 opinions would be good, just to see if there's some congruity and balance, or maybe amalgamate the 2. And the older the devotee, the better. If it's a Prabhupada disciple, better. So, Jairade is applying. This is about the woman who wants to stay married because it's her karma, and Jairade, formerly Jenny Yu, a.k.a. Jairade, or a.k.a. Jenny Yu, this is what she does for a profession. So she's saying this will just perpetuate the cycle, and the son will learn this, that this is normal, and will likely repeat the behavior. She's speaking from experience. She deals with people like this as part of her job. So this is not her idea or just a thought. This is what she deals with, and this is what she studied. This is both statistical research and it's practical experience. The generational trauma will not stop until someone takes responsibility and stops it. Yeah, this is an important point. And whatever that generational trauma is, whatever kind of abuse it is, misbehavior it is, it has to stop somewhere. And the tendency to continue it is obviously strong if you've been raised in that environment. Even the tendency to abuse sexually another person is strong when we've been abused sexually. And you would think it would be the opposite because, we've been so hurt. Why would we want to hurt someone? But that tendency is there. It's ingrained. It's samskara. Hare Krishna. My phone is, Krishna conscious that my phone is giving likes and other emoticons without me touching the screen. Does anyone know if it's a virus or something? No, maybe it's 5G. 5G can read your mind and it just puts the emotions up. Keep those emoticons coming. That's how this gets shared more. Yeah, that's going to be the new thing. Like whatever you're feeling, the emoticon will come up. And then you're going to say, but I don't feel that way. And the other person's, yes, you do. You can't hide it. That's your emoticon. No, there's a software problem with the emoticons. We're going to get in trouble when our phones read our minds and, the whole world can see what we're thinking. Oh, that's going to be a disaster. It happens to me too. Oh well. Krishnakanta, I don't think you're laughing at me when I don't say something funny, and you laugh. So don't worry. So Kaylee Gardner is saying, seeing the atheistic scientists as gurus is very apt now, given how popular authors like Richard Dawkins are. His books are treated like scriptures. For many atheists. Yeah, atheism seems to be a religion, deep faith. You need deep faith that God doesn't exist. You believe in God, we believe in science. Oh, is that what you believe? You believe God doesn't exist? I'm trying to hit C more with my left hand. My left hand's not strong enough. Okay. Scripture for many atheists. Yeah, let me get the C more. I have to get my right hand up. It's amazing. I have to hold the phone. There we go. My right hand is amazing and my left hand is not. Okay. Kaylee goes on to say, Carl Jung said that humans have a religious instinct, that we have a natural tendency toward faith. He argued that those who are atheists are devoted to science above all, are also engaging the religious instinct, but their faith is in reason and logic. Yeah, 100%. I agree. It's definitely, you have faith-based, faith. Like, you don't have faith? Like, faith's not part of consciousness? It's right there in the Bhagavad Gita, where all faith is part of our consciousness. It's just your belief that God exists. You really believe what you just said? You have no beliefs? You are pure reason and logic, no beliefs? I don't believe God exists. Show me God. I don't see God, therefore he doesn't exist. Sir, I don't see your intelligence. Does that mean it doesn't exist? No, but you can see I'm intelligent. Yeah, you can't see the universe has intelligence. Hello, anybody home? Lights are on, but nobody's home. So the atheist and the theist, they're kind of like the conservatives and liberals. They just can't see eye to eye. Anyway, there's plenty of people who will be open to our message. And if you're going to deal with atheistic scientists, it's advisable that you have like 65 PhDs. Otherwise, they won't listen to you. Or you've written you're a Nobel laureate, or you've written a New York bestseller book. They might listen, yeah. Otherwise, yeah. And even then, they may not listen. Anyway, Bhaktivedanta Institute is trying to make inroads. It happens to me too. I think that, like that example, right? You can fast on your own, but when it's a fast day, you go crazy. Puna is back. Puna means again, so that was a pun. Puna. Her mother gave her that name because she was the second girl. Again, a girl, Puna. So Puna is back in class again and again. When other people send the like and love emojis, it will keep showing up on your screen without you touching it. Oh, so maybe it's not you. Maybe you're innocent, Krishna content. Maybe your phone's okay. Maybe there's no asuras inside your phone. How to know before getting married if husband is qualified? What are the red flags if a woman sees she should not get into a relationship? I think on my website under marriage, I have the red flags. I have written 2 documents of red flags. And these were not anything that I read. These were just things that I've observed. But I think one of the big ones is like, Here's an example that some woman will write to me and say, well, I have this marriage problem. And I'll say, well, you should tell your husband this. And she says, he won't listen. Or I'll say, well, you two should sit down and talk about it. And she'll say, he doesn't want to talk about it. Then I'll say, well, why don't you have some marriage counseling? And then she'll say, he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't believe in it. He just believes if we just follow what's in the scripture, everything will be fine. Or we just chant our rounds, everything will be fine. Which, if you could chant the pure holy name, maybe. It would be fine because you'd be so ecstatic you wouldn't even care if you had a good marriage. So that would solve your marriage problems. Or you'd be so transcendental you wouldn't even know you had marriage problems. Everyone in the neighborhood would know except you, so you'd be fine. But until you transcend, you could use help. So I always tell women if they're meeting a guy and, they're getting to know him and they like him and say, to talk about this and say, if I see a problem in you or you see a problem in me, will you be willing to discuss it and talk about it either with one another or in marriage counseling or in some way? Is that, or you just, that's not what you want to do. You just, you just feel like if we just chant and be good devotees, everything will be fine and, we don't have to talk about it or we just have to eat more pakoras or what? What's your, how do you deal with that? And if he says, oh yeah, definitely, we should just chant 64 rounds. That would solve everything. That would be a red flag because if you can talk about things, if you're in a bind and you can't figure out how to solve a problem, if you're open to getting counseling, it can save most marriages. Not only save them, but it can help get them in the beginning on the right track. My wife does marriage counseling, and a lot of people she counsels are premarital and also newly married couples. And she says, and it's my observation as well, that it's so good they do this in the beginning because they're learning all the tools that they need to have a successful marriage. And people who do that would have a very successful marriage. So, if they're willing, you want to go to there's a workshop on marriage, you want to go, would you be willing to do that? Oh, I'd love to do that. I think that's important. One brahmachari just wrote me, he's read 5 books on marriage. He's asking, are there any other books? Yeah, go marry that one. Everybody's going to write me a letter. What's his name? Where does he live? Someone who's really, working on themselves. That's another one, are you into working on yourself? No, just 64 rounds will solve all that, We have to be willing to see our faults and work on them. That's really important in a marriage, in a relationship, because your partner is going to point that out. So these are some red flags. They don't want to work on the relationship. They don't want to work on themselves. What do you do when there's a problem? How do you reconcile it? 64 rounds. We need to read more Bhagavatam. Okay, beautiful. Transcend it all. But until you transcend it all, or you think, well, that will purify it, it'll purify a lot of things, but it doesn't necessarily purify relationship issues. It can, but if you read, we have a book called Namamrita. It's all the quotes Prabhupada had on the holy name. I don't think you'll read one quote where it says chanting Hare Krishna will solve all your marital problems. It actually sometimes creates a few, you neglect your partner and you think you just chant, everything will be fine. Yeah, sometimes it adds a few problems. So it's funny, you have to be practical because sometimes the very thing that's supposed to solve the problems ends up becoming the cause of the problem. Isn't it? Sometimes. That's the funny thing or the interesting thing or the strange thing about Krishna consciousness, that sometimes the solution, when improperly applied, becomes the problem. So, those are some red flags. So, to me, those are some big red flags. Doesn't get along with his mother. That's another big one. Not necessarily a problem, but something to consider. Doesn't get along with his brothers and sisters. Never got along with the other brahmacharis. That's like a whole stream of red flags. That's like a red sky. There was one brahmacharini in San Diego, and one devotee came to San Diego and met her, and he was interested in her. And he was asking me about her, and I said, I have never, ever heard any woman in the ashram ever say anything bad about her, ever. That's a good recommendation, isn't it? Otherwise, what about her? Oh, everyone in the ashram hates her. They want to kick her out. She's so selfish. She's such a slob. She's so nasty. Nobody likes her. Yeah, you might, want to be a little cautious. Or if they say that about the brahmachari, he's a bully. He's a this, thinks he's God, So do a little private investigation, Talk to get the brahmacharis. I know I'm a woman, but I just got to ask you something. So-and-so brahmachari. Tell me the truth. What's he really like? Be sitting down when he tells you, because you might faint. Okay? Yes, you all love me, so you're flying emojis, and we all love one another. Didn't Prabhupada's sister, Pishima, had to cook meat for her husband? Do you think she should have let him? I'm not sure, but I'm glad you brought this up. It's a good point. This is, sometimes when a woman is being abused, the example of Pishima is brought up. Her husband, as far as I know, was a drunkard. I don't know if he was a meat eater. He was a drunkard, and she stayed with him. And he eventually changed, because he saw what a saint his wife was. That changed his heart. And I don't think as an initiated Vaishnava she would cook meat. Now, in China, the vast majority of the women who are devotees, their husbands did not become devotees, and their husbands eat meat. And, it's a kind of training we have to give them of how to transition and make that. Because as devotees, cooking meat is like eating meat. It's something you want to avoid. If you have no other choice, like your husband would kill you or send you to the desert, something, if you don't cook meat, there may be exceptions. But in general, we would try to avoid that as far as possible. So that was the example, that she remained a chaste, dedicated wife. But I think an important distinction is here, that there was in the story that I've heard, there was nothing about her being physically abused, verbally abused, or sexually abused. It's just that he was kind of degraded, and she stayed with him as a chaste wife, and it helped him. And maybe she knew it would help him, and maybe she had that faith. And so that story is often used when a woman is being emotionally abused or physically or sexually abused, that you should stay with him, because Pishima stayed with her husband, and by staying with him, he'll become purified. But as Jai Radhe rightly said, that the opposite is often the case. It empowers them to become worse, and it destroys the family. So these things have to be dealt with a cool head. And that's why it takes mature deliberation and discussion with mature devotees. Because every issue has two sides, and the biggest mistake we can make is just focus on one side without understanding the other side, so we don't get a balanced presentation. And that was the whole idea of how I started, saying Shastra says this, so I just do it. But what about the other side? You didn't take that into consideration. If there is another side, you might say there is no other side. Okay, but at least you've investigated and you found, no, there is no other way. This is how it is. Okay, so we do that. Now we're correct. We've understood correctly. But if there is another side, we need to understand it. And a lot of the issues that face you in your life also face the leaders of ISKCON who are trying to understand how to practically implement certain principles. And now we want to implement Varnashram. And so Varnashram it's a whole challenge of how that would be implemented, because we've never really done it before. And sometimes, Prabhupada said Varnashram is for everybody, so everybody can be engaged. And I've heard some devotees talk about Varnashram in a way that most people in the world would want nothing to do with it. So that's an interesting point. This is Varnashram. Women like this, men like this, kids like this, live like this, don't do this. And I'm like, if Varnashram is meant to engage everyone, I think that lecture would kind of have eliminated 99% of anyone who would have been interested in living on a farm. So, these are things that we have to, understand. Even as senior devotees, it's not always easy. So don't feel bad if you're confused. And I don't think Pishima should have left her husband because it had a good result, but you would have to investigate further if she was cooking meat. I doubt it. Or maybe fish, perhaps. These things have to be, of course, be taken on a one-on-one basis. Like, if you're an initiated disciple, would your guru allow you to cook for your husband meat? Better you hire someone who can do it. You have to buy it, and it's not ideal. Nadia says, we were discussing with devotees yesterday about regulative principle for sex life. It's been hard to understand that marriage is not for illicit sex other than for giving birth to Krishna conscious children. Yeah. If you were born a few hundred years ago, you would have no difficulty understanding it. The hippies ruined everything. Because the hippies, they just opened up the free sex thing, that became normal. Nadia, I'll finish reading your question, but I just want to tell you something. My sister told me, she was in high school, pre-hippie time. When I entered high school, it was right when the hippie thing happened. And with hippie thing, all the rules and regulations were, the 4 regulative principles were no longer breaking the 4 regulative principles was kind of the foundation of the hippie movement. Not gambling, meat eating, not so much, but we were already doing that. But drugs and sex. So my sister told me that prior to that, 63, 64, sometimes it would get out in the school that one of the girls had sex with some boy. And everyone basically called her, or at least felt that she was the high school prostitute. That's why I say if you grew up in that era, you would have a less difficult time understanding this. Now, if you're 13 or 14 in some areas of the world and you haven't had sex, you're considered the high school prude. Prude, which means just like very stuck up and Puritan-like. So look at how the world has changed. But let me continue reading what you've said. This is interesting discussion. It's been hard to understand that marriage is not for illicit sex other than for giving birth to Krishna conscious children. I see this as a hot topic. Yeah. You got it right. It's a hot topic these days. It's always a hot topic. It's just what's happening now. This is quite interesting with COVID. Because all the devotees are one place, what I'm seeing is that they're much more productive now. They're not, because all that time traveling and the unsettling of traveling and adjusting to time zones, it takes up a lot of time, and your productivity is really handicapped. Now everybody's sitting in one place. Everyone's more productive. And so what I see happening is a lot of the issues that are in people's minds, now they're able to deal with them, talk about them. And this is always an issue. And it's like a hot topic these days. It's always been a hot topic. But the difference between these days and the 70s is we're more realistic now, more willing to talk about these things more openly than in the past. How to have a regulated sex life in marriage. I see many devotees understand Grihastha Ashram as a license to regulated illicit sex. Is it better to go straight to Vanaprastha? more than grihast, so you don't feel a license to illicit sex if you don't need the license. Yeah. Instead, focusing on serving together or raise Christian conscious children. Well, if you don't need to be married, and your parents aren't like going to go crazy, and if you don't get married, and your guru is not telling you to get married, and you don't feel you need it, then there's no need to do it. Marriage is for those who need it. And so it's interesting because the topic that was, this topic was indirectly discussed in our meeting today. And one of the devotees was saying something which I've often said, is that, and he was quoting another devotee who said this, is that if you look at the world, if you look at the world that we're trying to help become Krishna conscious, you'll see it's only a very small percentage that can actually follow strictly, and it's the rest of the world. And if we try to implement strict principles within the rest of the world, then we alienate people. They don't feel that they can relate to Krishna consciousness, you know. So actually the first time I heard devotees speak, after the lecture, I heard the four principles. And, you know, if the lecture was like, this is what you have to do, follow these principles, I probably never would have come back. Fortunately, that's not what the lecture was about. So this devotee was making the point that we have to preach in a way which is relatable and practicable. People can do it. And he wasn't saying this directly, but indirectly he was saying this push to push people, you know, like, what's the goal of Krishna consciousness? To make as many disciples as possible? Not exactly. You could say to make as many capable, qualified disciples as possible, but the goal is to engage people in Krishna consciousness, whether they become initiated now or their next life. And so his point was, we have to meet people where they are and engage them where they are. So if you need to have regular sex life aside from giving, aside from procreation after 50 rounds, that's like something, you know, when I say regular, I mean like regular, like often. You probably don't want to get initiated yet. And when you're older, it naturally subsides. It's just, you know, medically, after you have a few kids, it subsides. When men get older, it subsides. When you've been married a long time, it subsides naturally. So a lot of the devotees who are older, they have no problem following the principles. Some devotees who are very advanced have no problem following the principles. Many of devotees do. So it's just a question. The question is, do I want to commit to 16 rounds and 4 regular principles when I'm 19 years old? Some devotees can do it, and some devotees want to do it. But you shouldn't feel pressured that you have to do it now. You might feel, well, maybe it's better when I'm older. I'll wait to be initiated for 20 years, or 30 years, or 40, whatever. And there's a solid, yeah, but if I don't get initiated, then I won't go back to Godhead. No, you have the holy name, you have Prabhupada, you have the guru you want to be initiated by. You are connected in so many ways. I think it's unhealthy to make devotees feel like they have to do this even when they're not certain, and then it puts a lot of pressure on you. So yes, Prabhupada said that sex is the entanglement and we should be able to give it up, and that's how you get out of this world. And that's a fact which you can't erase that fact from reality, and you can't erase that fact from the Shastra. That's just the fact. That's how it is. So that being said, the goal of Krishna consciousness, at least one of them, is to gradually become attracted to Krishna and lose our attraction for the opposite sex. That's the goal. And so Grihastha life is the platform to do that. So we don't get married. The license for sense gratification, what Prabhupada meant is, well, you don't have the license in the brahmacharya ashram or vanaprastha sannyas. And the license for illicit sex, he said sense gratification. You could also add pakoras and halva to the license, more than you'll get in the temple and the brahmacharya ashram. But the license was you could have sex for having children. So it was a very restricted license. Not everyone was able to follow that well. But devotees persevered, And gradually, as they advanced, they found that the happiness of Krishna consciousness was much greater than the pleasure of sex, and they gradually were able to do it. So this is something we all want to consider. You know, don't feel like you have to be initiated, like I have to have it now. And the next, oh, my Guru Maharaj might leave the planet and I'll never get initiated. There'll be somebody else. Don't worry. It's not like that Guru Maharaj is not your Guru Maharaj because you never sat in an initiation. He'll be eternally your Guru Maharaj as your Siksha Guru. And he may be the most important Guru, and you may take Diksha from someone else because it's a formality and you need to formally commit and make your vows and so forth. But to find your level, this is it, whatever your level is, then work from that level. And it can create all kinds of problems if you're not ready and you feel that you have to do it. When people say I want to be initiated, I'm always a little bit like, let's wait a little more. Let's think about it. You sure you're ready? So I think that's important. I don't know if that answered your question exactly, but if I were to answer it more specifically, it would be better I answered it privately to deal with your specific situation. Would it be better to stay unmarried? Yes and no, no and yes. Yes and no. It's an individual situation. Okay, we're going to answer Billy Lynn's question. If I were sitting in a class and say, according to the Shastra, does it say it's better to get married or better to be single? The Shastra would say, better to be single. If you're answering the general question, is it better to be married or better to be single? The answer is, depends on who you're talking about. There's a devotee he's young and very learned, an amazing preacher. And my wife said, I hope he never gets married because if he has to, deal with all the responsibilities of marriage and working like that, it's going to minimize the great effect he has with his preaching. So that's coming from a woman who's married. It's interesting, right? So that's one way of looking at it. Prabhupada said, I got the order when I was 26 years old to preach. He said, if I were not married, I could have done it, but I had so many responsibilities. So that's the idea. You have other responsibilities. But for many people, marriage is necessary. Otherwise, they'll degrade themselves because of their sexual needs. And they'll degrade other women. A lot of the women in our movement, they can sense when a man needs to be married, and just the vibration that comes to him. And they can also sense when a man is pure. He doesn't have that need. And I'm sure you can sense that also, Billy Lynn. And that's something we need to sense within ourselves, if we need it. Sad that I have to leave class today. Yeah, well, class was late. And tomorrow we will be back to our time again. So Nadi says, maybe that thought of it's just my karma, let it be, is fake renunciation. Could be. Could be ignorance. It could be fake renunciation based on ignorance. And real renunciation is doing something to fix the problem and leave the results in the hands of Krishna. Yeah, we would always, when you can't do anything, then it would, at that point, it would not be Krishna conscious to try to do something. But if there's a situation which is not healthy, maybe she can tolerate it. Maybe she's okay. Maybe she weighed the pros and cons. Well, by staying with him, I have this security and that, and I can tolerate his misbehavior and not take it seriously. Maybe she calculated it. But my point is if it is detrimental, not only spiritually, but emotionally, physically, and so forth, then it's going to affect your spiritual life anyway, and then something needs to be done. Eddie, if your partner cheats you, do you think that part of the forgiveness process to trust him again. You can trust, if your partner cheats, you can trust him again if you can trust him again. And how would you know if you can trust him again? Well, that would be based on if he's sincerely apologized. Is he doing something to... Maybe your partner has a history of cheating or a prehistory of it. Maybe he needs some help. So then you would know and say, okay, I forgive you, but you need to do A, B, and C because without A, B, and C, how can I trust you? So it's always good to trust your partner if they're... I think it's unfair not to trust them if they're really able to solve their problem and they're really trying and so forth. And that would produce the best result in the long run. It's always the first choice is stay together and give them the benefit of the doubt if they sincerely repent and they're sincerely trying. If you see in them they don't really care, they just, there's nothing I can do, it's how I am, and they're not trying, and they're not apologetic, then it might be like, well, you're just going to have to live your life with the fact that this is going to continually happen, and you make the decision. Maybe it's okay, maybe it's not. There's no, in a sense, there's no right or wrong. You might say, okay, I could live with that. It's just, I've heard some women say, look, he's a good husband, he provides, he's a good father, let him go out and have some fun, I don't mind. All right. So if that's all right with you, then it works. If it's not all right with you, then you're going to have to discuss that with him. The emoticon problem, we're being invaded by emoticons. Puna is always here. Oh, I didn't realize you're always here. Of course you're always here. Otherwise, why would you have that name? My friend is this is in Krishna Karshini, is a JPS disciple. That's Japtaka Swami. And her husband is not a devotee. Before getting initiation from JPS, she told him that she would not be able to follow the fourth principle. Maharaj gave her initiation anyway. So if someone doesn't want to follow fourth principle fully, maybe better marry a non-devotee. I know it sounds controversial. Or better take initiation from Japtaka Maharaj. But I think he's only like 71 away from 50,000, and I think he's going to stop. So you better get it now. These are discussions that all of us as mature adults, in consultation with senior devotees, are going to have to resolve, because these are real problems and realities. And I don't think it's going to get any better. My wife and I were talking yesterday about the problems that a lot of devotees have. And we were saying a lot of the problems devotees have are because they never lived in ashrams. They don't know things. They don't have the samskars. They never were trained. And we met another devotee. We were on a walk yesterday. We met another devotee. And they were talking about some woman, and I said, who is that? And then the woman that my wife was talking to she said, yeah, my husband, he doesn't know any of the women's names. I go, did he live as a brahmachari? She said, yeah. I go, that's why. He said, it was like, you think it's weird. There's all these women in the temple, we don't even know their names. Why don't you? Well, as brahmacharis, we never, that was just how we were trained. So it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny. I'm not saying that's like ideal, but it just shows when there's a certain kind of training you get. You learn certain things in the temple. And so now we have a movement where people have a harder time because they never learned these things. You live as a brahmachari. You were celibate for like 10 years, It's like you've done it. You know how to do it. So if you have a challenge in marriage, and you want to, you talk to your wife and say, let's tighten up on this. You know how to do it. You did it for 10 years. So you have certain advantages. So, but these are discussions, and it's funny you say that, but I'm sure in some cases the marriage will go better if one is not a devotee, because, who knows? It's individual. And that's why I think this is a good way to end the class, because we began by saying, you need to understand Shastra and context. This is also another context. And, according to Shastra, marrying a non-devotee, it's like, no, don't do that. But in some situations, I've seen devotees have better relationships, married a non-devotee, for various reasons. This not being necessarily the reason, but it may be, and there are other reasons. So this is an interesting conversation. Krishna Karshani says, unfortunately, ISKCON is giving initiation to young people who are not ready to follow the fourth regulative principle, the fourth being no illicit sex. Statistics are saying vast majority of ISKCON marriages are not able to follow fully fourth principle. Sad truth. Sad but true. At the same time, we pressure devotees to take initiation vows. They would almost for sure would not follow. Before I answer your question, I am Krishna Karshani's English teacher. So initiation doesn't have a C. Where that C is, put a T there. INITIA, initiation. Yeah, English is a weird language. If you spell it like you pronounce it, then that seems correct, but English, it doesn't work that way. So it's initiation without the C. Turn the C into a T. Initiation, yeah. I think this topic, something is, no, that wasn't proper English. I think this topic is something that's going to be discussed more and more in the future out of necessity, especially as the movement becomes larger. It will be more conscious that we have more people, which means more people are not ready, and it may take them many years to become ready. And I think the discussion also involves discussing what is initiation, what is guru. There's a lot of misunderstanding, which then makes people feel, oh, I need to take initiation. If I don't take initiation, my life is useless. When in fact, the real initiation is your connection with that guru. And even if he leaves the world and you haven't taken diksha from him, you're eternally connected. It's not like the diksha was the eternal connection. The connection was the heart connection. And if you take from another guru, the more the merrier. How can I take from another one? I'm not really about. Anyway, that guru who left the world will be your most important guru, not your diksha guru. It's not like your diksha guru has to be the only one or the ultimate one or the topmost or, nobody can compare. A lot of times it's not like that at all. So these things are not taught so broadly. And then you're taking initiation. What are you getting initiated into? The holy name. Do you already have the holy name? Yes. So what are you actually doing? You're making a formal connection. You're taking your vows publicly. That's what's going on. So, are you at a loss that you never did that? Well, if you took those vows in your heart, you've got a good relationship with the guru. You're 16 rounds, chill out, Prabhus. You're fine. Don't worry. So this idea that I have to take initiation, I have to. It's forcing people to take initiation before they're qualified, because they think, well, if I die and I'm not initiated, and who knows where I'll go. Yeah, but real initiation is your connection with your guru. In your heart, through service, through the dedication to the mission. And the Prabhupada's there. You don't think Prabhupada could make up? You say, but according to Shastra, this and that, but if you're not qualified to be initiated, and then you die, you don't think Prabhupada could make up for that? And Prabhupada told one man who was not initiated, he said, you're going back to Godhead. So there is other evidence, and this is a real cause of problem. When people feel forced to be initiated, they really, which is, it's good. I'm not putting down initiation. I think it's fantastic that you would You would dedicate yourself in this way. I did it when I was 19, I'm happy I did it, no regrets. And for the Brahmanically inclined devotees, for those devotees who are sincere to follow and preach, they should be initiated. But when they're ready, not before, and don't feel pressured. Now, some gurus feel that even if they can't follow the fourth principle well, we'll initiate them because the connection will be stronger. Okay, they can feel that way. If that's okay with your guru, if your guru is like, okay, 3.5 principles, half. Keep your sex in marriage. If your guru is okay with that, then, there are some gurus that are okay with that, and there are some that are definitely not okay with that, Maybe that should be on their profile. Like, you want to rent a hotel, it gives you all the facilities, amenities, So this guru's amenities, blah, blah, blah. And you can be initiated, in 6 months with 3.5 principles. This guru, you can be initiated with 5 principles and 8 years. Okay, all right. Okay, we're joking around, but that's, it's kind of like what it's like. So some gurus understand you're not going to perfectly follow. Some gurus will demand you perfectly follow, and if you don't, they would never initiate you. Some gurus, like you said, no, you're not going to follow, and okay. They feel that the initiation connection is important. Some feel that the initiation connection is not important. The real importance is the heart. So these things need to be clarified within us, but clarified on the leadership level and presented to the devotees. And, the movement's heading in that direction, I believe, to get some more clarity on this. And because all the gurus are individual, they're acting individually, which creates some confusion because it's not like there's a unified policy. And so that's maybe where the... Pray to Krishna to listen to you. Don't pray to Krishna to give tolerance, power. In that case, Krishna will look after your problem. Yeah. Daily pray to Krishna to give you daily pray to give you tolerance, power, but pray for intelligence of what to do. I'm at my walk. I have no glasses with me. That's a reason of me making so many mistakes. No problem. No, at least you know the way to spell it. Number 2, behavior. I forgot what I said. I strongly agree with what you said before. I too think in the future there are going to be more people attracted to Krishna service, more than people initiated in future. Should we then? I have to go down. This is so interesting that we were talking about this in our meeting this morning, and I've been thinking about this for like 4 yugas, but it's coming to the surface now, and I was thinking about it after the meeting we had, and now it's nice we're talking about it. Should we then change the way we talk about the topics like fourth principle from now? Get more people attract? Yeah, to Krishna first, then anything? Yes, definitely. And leave initiation for years after, only when they feel they want to be initiated. And more dedicated to Lord's mission, 100%. Yeah, we don't want to force them. That's up to them. It's always about serve Krishna, follow whatever principles you can. Let them serve and associate with devotees, whether initiated or not, leaving only for those who really want to compromise to Prabhupada's missions. Yeah. Well, in our group, Sattva, this is basically one of the philosophies of our culture. Basically, just the way you said it, and this is the way I've always explained it. Let people come where they're at and do what they can, and not feel pressured to be better. We explain what standards are, but we don't tell them you have to follow this. That's totally their choice, and some will follow. Definitely, you don't have to force them; they will. I strongly agree with what you said. I think it's the same thing. So Gopinath is going to take initiation when he's 70. Unfortunately, I won't be here, but Some guru will be here. Have you written on initiation? Yes. If you go on my website and you go under Guru or Guru Tattva or Guru and Initiation, I've written extensively on these topics. And one of the things, I mean, there's a lot that's written there. A lot of it is for people who ask me to become their guru, but it's valuable for everyone to read in general. And this is one of the principles, that connection. Because a lot of devotees feel like, well, I don't have a connection with you if I don't take Diksha. That's not true. There are plenty of people who have taken Diksha who don't have a strong connection with Prabhupada. And there's plenty of people who have a very deep connection with Prabhupada who have not taken Diksha. And the same with living gurus. There's plenty of people who have taken Diksha who are very distant from their guru. They're not following or serving. And some who are as Siksha disciples are much closer. So we need to understand this. It's important. Mm-hmm. Aldo has a question. Wow, that's quite a question. My son's mother, we separated 10 years ago, calls herself materialistic and is offensive to Krishna consciousness movement. And I don't give expensive clothes to my son. She acts offended and offends me. He always looks for a way to take advantage of situations financially. If I do not go his demands, there is danger. They do not let me see my son. It's very offensive and great. Psychologically, it affects me. And although I try to forgive her, I can't hate her for that. I know that hating her does not help me to love Krishna. So even if it hurts, I want to forgive her for Krishna because I know that she is also loved by Krishna. I want to forgive her. But hate is heavy. I don't want to have that bad feeling, but I don't know how. Take the forgiveness course. Then you'll know how. It's not, hate the sin, not the sinner. You may dislike what she does, but don't take it out on her personally. Anyway, take it as some karma you have to deal with. And so you should help your son a little bit according to your means, not extravagantly, and try to keep them happy as best you can. If they're happy, it'll be easier to forgive them. The problem is that almost all before initiation think they will follow, but after some time they realize they can't. Yeah, and that's maybe more of an issue for the guru to decide. You know, it's a problem. The guru says you have to wait 8 years, and then you're thinking, he's not going to be here in 8 years. He's, you know, or how do I know he'll be here in 8 years? And 10 years from now, if he says 8 years, there's less of a chance. And 20 years from now, he says 8 years, there's practically no chance. So what to do? We have to understand the broader concept of guru and understand Diksha in that light. If your guru wants you to wait and then he leaves, still that's your guru. That's your connection. That's the person who inspires you. And you may take Diksha when you're ready from someone else, and that will be a different kind of relationship than maybe other disciples of that guru have. Then you have sometimes a disciple grows apart from their Diksha guru and it grows closer to his Siksha guru, and that Siksha guru becomes more important in their life. This is just how life happens. And I think it's important. I think part of the problem is that life happens and we try to deny it by throwing shlokas at it and saying, no, life doesn't happen this way. And then I say, no, but it does. It is happening this way. You know, you can't change reality with a shloka. If, you know, the shloka doesn't change the reality. I mean, sometimes we don't see the reality, and the shloka helps us see the reality. Shastra chakshus. But sometimes we do see the reality, and the shloka is not meant to deny that reality. We have to see that reality and understand how to apply it. And that's one of the realities we see in the Krishna consciousness movement, that some people become more attached are more involved in the mission of their Siksha Guru than their Diksha Guru for whatever reason. It's not that I'm saying that it's wrong or it's a bad reason. And I wouldn't say it's wrong or bad. It's good. They have more connection with a devotee that's inspiring them, or it's helping them, or if they're advancing more, why would that be bad? It's not offensive to the Diksha Guru. You know, your Siksha Guru is just trying to get you closer to Prabhupada, which is what your Diksha Guru is doing. And if your Siksha Guru is helping you, why would your Diksha Guru not be delighted that there's somebody helping you getting closer to Prabhupada? Because that's what he's trying to do. And if he can get help, all the better. He's not attached. Now, you have some major service and you say, Guru Maharaj, I'm not doing it anymore because I have a Siksha Guru. That's different. I'm talking about general. So what will happen when we all go? You'll all become Guru. That's what will happen. That's very encouraging to know that someone can associate and serve from whatever level they are. Yeah. That's another reality, isn't it? I mean, it's like the Shastra is not meant to change the reality of what's happening. That's just the reality. I mean, so many things that I talk about, I'm just explaining what I see and saying and showing how if you don't acknowledge these realities and try to apply them within a broader Krishna conscious context, it doesn't work. That's all. I mean, if you look at so many things I'm saying, what am I saying? I'm just talking about life and looking at it, looking at a reality through a Krishna conscious lens that doesn't deny that, but takes that into consideration and then adapts to it. Okay, Billy Lynn, we'll see you later. And I have an appointment with my cereal bowl. I haven't had breakfast. Nadia says, it's so true. Maybe prove that to their guru following for some time steadily before initiation. Yeah, the guru has to feel confident also. What responsibility do we have towards our Siksha Gurus? It depends on the relationship. Like Charlene, if you have a Siksha Guru, you could say to the Siksha Guru, I promised you I will chant 4 rounds and follow 3.65876 regulative principles. According, you can decide and say, and I want to serve you in this way, and I will promise you I will get up every day at 5, and blah, blah, blah. You can take it any way you want. It's up to you. The relationship is very flexible. And it can be exactly like the relationship that an initiated devotee has. It's just that the commitment may be different. Or you could commit 16 rounds, 4 principles, and say, I want to commit now, or commit this month, Purushottam Mas, I want to do it. I want to commit that to you, or I want to engage in serving you. What can I do? There's so many things. It depends, because what I see is I have a lot of Siksha disciples, but the relationship is different. With varieties of disciples, because it's based on what they want. And some just want the relationship of someone they can go to when they have questions and can be answered. Some want to engage in service. Some eventually want to take Diksha. So it just depends what you want, what you need. And there's, as Prabhupada said, you can have many Siksha Gurus. It's not just one. If you have one Siksha Guru, it doesn't mean you can't have another. The more the merrier. Unless they're totally on different ends of the totem pole and you're getting totally confused. That could be a problem. But also, finding a guru. Okay, so finding a guru whose nature and outlook really resonates with you. It's important. And whose service and your service is, you see eye to eye on and you're inclined towards. Satyupa has posted about initiation, if you want to read that. What will happen when all your gurus will leave your body? Who is going to take your place? You. If they let women become gurus, you'll do it. You may become initiating guru with 3 disciples. That may be it. It's probably not going to be that most gurus will have many disciples. There'll be a lot of gurus. And it'll be more of a teacher-student type thing than, the guru coming in on an elephant, sitting on a big throne type thing. The majestic guru with thousands of disciples. It'll be more like the village guru, with a little group who sits under a tree. At least we're thinking, we're hoping it'll be more like that. Is it correct to be closer to our Siksha than our Diksha? But actually, no, you can't, it's not correct. Nothing is, it's not correct or not correct. It just depends. But actually, affection for both is there. I feel it's just different for each other. But is affection for both based on different reasons? Could be. Different functions. Based on different reasons, different relationship and closeness, yeah. It's not like if I have affection for my Siksha Guru, it minimizes my affection for my Diksha Guru. It doesn't have to be that way, or vice versa. That would be a material way of seeing it. And I think I'm very much in favor of going with a natural flow. If it's a natural relationship and it's developing naturally and you're benefiting, why would you want to deny it? And out of fear, thinking, well, I'm more attached to my Siksha Guru, or I'm more attached to my Diksha Guru, but my Siksha Guru is the one who's always helping me and I feel bad. Well, don't feel bad. It's just what it is, for whatever reason it is. That's what's going on. And so go with what's going on. And that will always produce the most natural, real result. You know, I really like my Siksha Guru. He helps me so much, but my Diksha Guru is so special. That's where I get all my inspiration. Okay, or vice versa. It's not right and wrong. There's no right and wrong. It's just what it is, and don't feel what it is wrong. As long as you're respectful and inspiring anyone, you're not minimizing anyone. There's nothing wrong. Go to breakfast. Almost ready. Go eat. Okay, I'm being ordered by my disciples to go eat. Okay, I will now, because you've ordered me, I will go eat. And I will drink the last drop of my ginger turmeric tea. I will now go eat. Hare Krishna to all of you. So, because we missed class on Monday, we did overtime today to kind of make up for it. And tomorrow we're going to have class with Russian translation, and it's going to be on the same topic we did last week, which is how to deal with life. You know, when life happens, how do we deal with it and remain Krishna conscious? Okay? So thank you all. Welcome. Thank you for coming. And is there anything else today? Yeah, there's japa. What time is it? Oh, this is dangerous. I eat breakfast, then I chant japa. Come to the japa class so you can wake me up. I'll be, the breakfast hits hard sometimes, like an hour later. So we'll be chanting japa at noon. We try to give some inspiration, and then we chant together. So you're all welcome to come. And if there's any other events going on today, I can't recollect at the top of my head, but Eddie would know. Radhapriya, if there's anything else going on, you can put the link up. So 1 hour, yeah, we're in 56 minutes. We'll see you in 56 minutes. Or let's say 53, come early. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi.